Welcome back to the channel, guys. In this episode, we are going to work on some improvements on the front end back here around the motor. I want to address some things and fix some things before the next track day here in 3 or 4 weeks. This series of improvements will probably cover a little bit of time, various evenings over the next couple of weeks. But always be improving is kind of part of a core value for me. So we are going to work on some improvements and get some things situated up here. First, we're going to address the oil leakage issue I had on track from the breather tank. If you watch the track video, you'll know what I'm talking about. If not, maybe go back and watch that. But after a little research, I found that likely my issue is that the ports for the breather tank are actually at the back of the heads. So I did not have this problem running this thing hard on the dyno. But I did have the problem on track. And after some research, it seems like the G-forces are driving oil back to the back of the heads, exactly where that port is at. And so it's more likely to create an issue, which I had, where this thing is just kind of a little overloaded with too much oil. So valve covers are reversible. So the real solution is that these ports are supposed to be at the front of the head. So that's less visually appealing. I don't like it, but it's functional. It needs to happen. So we're going to remove these valve covers and swap sides. That'll put the ports for these at the front of the heads. And we'll have to figure out hose routing once I get these swapped around. Have these off. These ports are super long and they make hose routing a little bit funky, especially now with them being at the front of the engine. So I went ahead and cut them off. They don't need that much purchase. I mean, here's the width of my thumb and there's already a raised edge there for the hose clamp anyway. So I went ahead and lopped that off, making sure I cleaned them real good with brake cleans and a rag to make sure I get no metal shavings in the motor. Got the valve covers back on. So now we're going to work on some hose routing next. I might need a T that I don't have, so we'll play with the hose routing, figure out what I like, and figure out if I need to go to the hardware store or the auto parts store tomorrow. The next thing I'm going to do is pull off this intake. Going to do a couple things while I've got it off. One, I want to get rid of these antennas that stick up. So on the throttle body, see if I can pull that out and thread it, tap it. And this one, I think I'm going to try and just plastic weld this, the hole shut, so I don't have a vacuum leak there. I don't need either of those two ports. And while I'm at it, I am going to go ahead and try my hand at porting the inside of these intake runners. Seems like a lot of guys do these to these LT2 intakes and have a little bit of success. Maybe I'll get 5 horsepower out of it, but anything helps, I guess. Okay, I've got the throttle body mounted up in my vise with some pads or rags just to kind of keep it from marring the surface. I'm thinking what I'm going to do, because this is just pressed in here, is take a torch, just kind of heat up this general aluminum area. Hopefully, I don't want to warp it or anything, so I'm not going to try and go too hot, but hopefully that'll loosen this up enough for me to pull this out. Okay, found a 10 by 1.5 Allen headed black, so I won't have to paint it, and I've got a tap for it, so we'll just run that in and should be able to put this in. I think I'm going to put an O-ring around here just to be safe. Alright, got it cleaned out real good, make sure there's no metal shavings in there. Put a little O-ring I have on this bolt, and we should be able to just thread this in. And it's kind of smushing out there. I might go to one size smaller O-ring, and maybe throw some Loctite on here, and then should be good to go. Well, that didn't take long at all. Just a quick hacksaw and then 30 seconds with a heat gun and an old soldering iron together. Just kind of held one in each hand and welded that up. It should be nice and airtight. I sanded it down just a little bit to make it look pretty. So next I'll be taking this die grinder on a Dremel and working on the bottom side of the intake and seeing if I can do any damage there. Well, it's probably not a great job, but I was able to smooth out, particularly along the bottom, but all the way around in this opening. I didn't go too deep. My the bit on here is not long enough, so it was hard to go deep, especially on these intake runners. I just kind of sanded in there and smoothed down a couple edges, but those ridges that are farther down in there I really couldn't get to. But should be a little bit of improvement, and might as well while I have it out. And with that, everything is all bolted back together and ready for a little driving tomorrow. Well, the desire for improving the looks just a little bit got the best of me. I know it adds probably 3 pounds, but I went and got a proper engine cover for this thing. Had to trim a little bit right here to get around the throttle cable, because in the Corvette application it has a drive-by-wire throttle body. But it should bolt up nicely. I think I am going to paint this orange just for fun, just to give it a little bit of color. I'm gonna try and heat these up. I think they're plastic, and I think they're just taped down. I pulled the bottom up, looked under the bottom, and I don't see any attachment there, so I think they're just taped down. So I think I'm just gonna try and heat these up and gently pull them out, and then paint it the same matte orange as the tube, just to kind of give it a little bit of pop, and then stick these back down. Maybe I'll try and figure out how to put some black lettering here in the word Corvette. Not sure if I'll do that or not. A little heat gun action, and these came off with a couple minutes. They are, from what I can tell, metal. So I'll get the other side off and clean this up, and then I should be able to spray paint it without masking it. I think I am going to try and mask off this Corvette logo here. Maybe I'll actually paint this black and then mask it off. I think that'll look good. This black, maybe if I can get black in the lettering, and then this kind of silver chrome color. It's not really chrome, it's more of just like a brushed aluminum look, and orange everywhere else. Step 1 complete. Cover is on there, and I'm working on the Corvette badging that goes right there. I do not have what you would call a steady hand, an artist's hand. So this lettering is recessed. I just kind of glob the paint in there, and I'm hoping I can run over it with some paint thinner and just clean up the edges, since the paint that needs to stay will be kind of recessed. I don't think that turned out too bad. I like it. Okay, the next thing I want to tackle is throwing an oil temperature sensor in here. So this improved racing block for going to an oil cooler has a port on the top for a sensor. So I bought the sensor and the adapter and a wiring harness. Just need to pull that out. I'm a little worried about it getting hot right next to the collector here. So I may throw some heat shield or maybe some header wrap around the sensor or something, or maybe around the header, just to kind of keep the temperature down. The next thing I think I'm going to tackle is creating an air dam for the air filter. I had this duct tape on the bottom of the air filter just to keep it from sucking hot air from the bottom, since it sits right above and just behind the radiator. So the bottom of this is just sucking hot air straight up through the radiator after it's passed through the radiator. So the quick simple solution was to throw some duct tape on it, but I actually want to create kind of an air dam that rests over the top of the radiator, so I can pull this tape off, and it'll protect all that hot air from getting up into this air filter. So I kind of mocked up what I want in a design, and drawing it out here on a little bit of the leftover aluminum I have from the rear diffuser. So we'll get this cut out and start bending, and then probably rivet it together in the shape I want it. Progress is coming along nicely on this. I'm gonna bend these flaps over, drill a hole and rivet those two together, and then probably trim this edge down maybe to the front here, draw a line here and trim that down, and trim these down. But that should function pretty well to keep air out of the radiator, or air from being sucked up behind the radiator that's hot, and the cold air going into the filter, and being able to use the full filter instead of just the top half of this. I don't know if there's an air restriction on that filter or not, but can't hurt. Well, it's all riveted together. I put some of this automotive edge trim around this hole just so that it doesn't chew up the filter, and I'm gonna throw some double-sided tape on here, and this will just kind of sit on top of the radiator. That's how I'm gonna attach it, and I think that'll be good enough. Just a good helping of double-sided tape. It's kind of thick foam-filled double-sided tape that's pretty strong. So that should hold it in place, mixed with the filter holding it in place. And that should be all I need. If I need more, then I'll have to fabricate something, but I think that'll be good enough. And there it is, completed and installed. Hopefully I'll have nice cool air and maybe a little bit more of it. I doubt it was limiting the horsepower with the airflow, but if I was, awesome, more power. All right, the last thing I wanted to get done was a another idler pulley. I picked up this idler pulley off Amazon. It's actually offset, so you can see the axis is a little below the center point, but that is what was going to work best for me. So that puts a little more wrap on this steering pulley. The power steering pump was kind of squealing on startup at sometimes, so just a little bit more wrap because this is only 4 ribs. Hopefully that'll help that out. Well, after much trial and error, I moved this idler pulley. Let's see if I can get this light right. Whatever. I moved it over here from the other side. So one of the things that probably the primary reason for this Atlas idler pulley was to bring this belt down a little lower, because it was very, very close to the bottom of the air filter. Now it's got about an inch gap. It's hard to tell in this shot, but it was nearly rubbing, and so I wanted to drive the belt down further so that there was a little more clearance. And then some extra wrap on the power steering pulley and some tension was a side benefit. But I think because of the rotational direction of the engine, with the belt moving this way, putting a pulley here right before this other pulley meant that this had to be like dead perfect. And it wanted to, I played with that a lot, took it off probably a dozen times and tried to change the angle slightly, and it just wanted to drive the belt off of the pulley or to the edge of the pulley, either going front or back. And so I kind of looked and said, well, after I realized kind of what was happening, it was that idler pulley was just driving the belt one direction or the other because it was so close to the other one. That's when I started looking on this side and found I could kind of use it for the same, use the mounting bolt for the alternator to drop this pulley on. And now I've started it up a couple times and it stays on right now. I haven't really seriously revved it, so I need to kind of take it out for a drive and just make sure that it stays on, but it's centered on all the pulleys. You know, 1 rib, this has 6 rib pulley, and it's a 4 rib belt, so it seems like it's gonna work. Just need to take it out for a drive. All right, guys. Tackled a number of tasks on the front end. Some of it very functional and some of it just for looks, but I'm digging the way it looks. Hope you guys are too, but if not, it's for me anyway. So that's gonna about do it for this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.